Welcome to the MetaMarine Podcast, where we talk all things from Warhammer 40k that have power armor. Keep all appendages inside the drop pod until it comes to a complete stop. It's time to rev your chainswords and beseech the Pantheon. Don't be a Tina. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the MetaMarine. This is episode 2. Welcome everybody. Please, we'd like to welcome our hosts, Nick Fuller, Thomas Bird, and Max Style. How are you guys doing?
Hey, good.
All right, doing well.
It's been an interesting week here in Atlanta. We have played a ton of games. We have learned a lot. We have learned a little, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Nick, what have you learned this week?
Well, I learned the hard way that the Exalted 8-Bound have Deep Strike innately, and not just Strategic Reserve.
Oh,
So I caught a spicy
accident.
Scud missile.
Was it just he just deep struck him traditional old school?
I was not really thinking. I was not expecting that, and I didn't plan to have a certain area of the board screened out, and it was the classic. Are you finished with your movement phase? Like, yeah.
Oh,
Okay, so I'm gonna rapid ingress these guys right here behind this box, and I was like, well, they gotta be 6 inches from the side, right? I'm like, no. Like, oh wait, so they gotta be out of my deployment zone for turn. It's like, no, man, nah. It's regular deep strike. I was like, oh.
oof.
That's gonna be costly.
Was it 6 of them or 3?
It was just 3, but they stood there menacingly and just stared at my exocrines, going like, yeah, man, it's almost time. You ready?
It's happening. Oh no. Oh, that's a burn hand like situation where you're like, well, you're not gonna forget that one ever again.
Oh yeah, no. We'll be screening a little better next time.
Yeah, traditionally I always see people putting Exalted 8-Bound on the line, like waiting for the starter's pistol.
Yep. So I got her first turn, and I just pushed a ton of bodies up front, and just kind of been like, you guys can chew on them over there, and I'll have a couple turns to like relax and hang out and be cool back in my deployment zone, and just kind of like chill, get ready for the inevitable onslaught once everything is dead in the middle field. So like I was like, yeah, we're good, and it was just like, nah, you ain't good.
We're not good. We're not good.
Good is way over there. You were far from it.
Not to disrail it, but do World Eaters have a redeploy ability?
Not that I know of.
No. They have their scout moves, but that's all they got in terms of moving guys.
But they can't just like figure out who's going first and then dump those guys back into Deep Strike?
No.
That'd be really cool.
But it's pretty standard. I mean, at least I think so, that they put 1 unit in Deep Strike. That's pretty standard for me, playing against them. So that's always a bad thing, but yeah. Can't watch out for that if you haven't played against World Eaters. They can deep strike with some of those guys.
Yeah, I thought it was real clever.
Yeah, and World Eaters, like, you know, if you think World Eaters are dead, or that seems to be the word on the street out of the data slate update, I would disagree. I think they're still pretty strong in the hands of a good player. You know, like maybe you're not YOLOing them all first turn and Angrons come back every turn, but like you play them smart, like they still do plenty of work. They don't need it. They got plenty of tools.
Yeah, it's hard to keep Angron down. Like, just it's harder now to bring it back every single turn, or you know, as often as but he still comes back enough. Like more than once is still, you know, rapid ingress. Angron is still.
You just need to bring it back one time. You hit that could just break the game open, right? So sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, or
it's hard enough to kill him the first time.
4 times against my town list.
Yourself, okay?
I am speaking for myself.
Here it is, baby. Oh,
Well, Thomas, what did you learn this week?
I learned, I played against Damien, one of our teammates. He was testing out custodes because he's going to be playing custodians for our team tournament. So I had to like basically get the kind of glimpse of what are the custodes rules and kind of get my head wrapped around how do I attack them. So we played that game. I got to see it firsthand and go through all the shenanigans and what does what, where it goes. So I learned, custodes are really good. And I was able to win that game. It was very close, but you had a lot of things that you have to like know and understand on how to exploit their things. And custodes are like one of those armies is like, sometimes they just hit all the 4s, and it's really, sometimes you can't do anything about it, but like you have to make them take a lot of saves. So sometimes they just fail a bunch of saves. So like it's very swingy, but you got to be able to hit them and understand where that fight first and all that stuff hits. So you can kind of work around it.
So is it just put apply directly to the forehead and hope for the best, or what's the best?
Oh no, there's a lot of strategy. So like, his list specifically had like 3 units of warrior. What is it called? Guardians, guard, and 3 units of wardens, right? And then a couple characters attached. So obviously Trajan, with the new updates to ignore modifiers, he becomes very powerful. He was always good, but like now he's extra good against certain matchups. The wardens have the once per game 4-up Feel No Pain, which sounds super scary until you realize they have to declare that at the start of the shooting or the fight phase. So before you do anything, nominate anything, obviously Marines, you're going to kind of telegraph it a little bit if you declare oath.
Yeah.
But they have to declare it. So like you're always kind of, from the Marine perspective, trying to like, hey, here's 2 warden squads. How can I drop something super threatening that can hit both, and then make my opponent decide to use it? And they're like, do you want to use it on this one? Do you want to use it on that one? Maybe one of them's oath that makes it obvious. Do you want to pop it on both? I mean, you can get them to spend it early, right? Because if you drop some plasma inceptors, 3 damage, they don't really want to, take 2 or 3 guys dying from some plasma inceptors. They might pop it, right? So you kind of have to put some units there to threaten. And usually, typically, if it's a foot heavy build or whatever, they don't have tons of units. It's just custos, right? In general. So if you can out activation them, if you can like put units in different angles where they want to fight you, so they can't fight all the units, you don't clump them up. You now start forcing them to kind of make decisions. And if you want to do fight first, there's lots of ways to kind of get around fight first. But like the main thing is that's a stratagem they can use. Trajan has that as Momish Echo, just a free ability if he wants to use that. But they can't pop the strat unless they're on an objective. So if you ever catch them kind of in between objectives, or you get them to pull off an objective, you can kind of charge them without having to worry about fight first if they're not on it. Because you just kind of think, oh, shoot, I can't charge them because they always have fight first, or maybe it's a character that gives them, no, it's a stratagem, it's on an objective. So
I did not realize that was on the objective.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Like on the objectives, like that matters. They do have -1 damage if you just like roll in hot and like, I got to pump you with all this 2 damage. That can be a big gotcha. It's not necessarily anything you can do about it. It is 2 CP, so like if you can force the custos to spend CP aggressively, it's big. They can grow guys back once per squad. They can just grow back a guy for 1 CP. So you're constantly like, let me chip a little damage here. Let me chip a little damage there. You want to grow your guys back. That uses it once per game. You're done. Use a CP, like spend. Fight first. The classic, if you can't just like catch them off the objective, but you really need to charge that objective, the second way you deal with fight first is you charge them with multiple things. Ideally, in my Marine list, I have some scouts left alive at this point. I charge the unit, and I like position the guys where I base all the guys with scouts, as many as I can, and then I hit one corner where maybe I only touch one guy with my big killie squad, so that whenever he fights first, he can only fight the guys that are in base, and now he can't fight with all the guys onto the guy he really wants to kill. He can only fight onto the engaged models, which would be the scouts. So you can do that with rhinos. You can do that with vehicles, like, slide a vehicle in sideways and tag like 3 or 4 guys, and then they got to pile into the closest. They can't go touch all the guys. You just don't move block yourself when you're trying to charge in. But that's a kind of good way to like, ooh, you have fight first. Ooh, Death Guard. Fight first, right? Death Guard is even easier just in the general, because you know which models are the choppy ones, right? So you get some punk characters that don't really fight. You get some guys holding guns, not really slappy, and you get the 2 or 3 guys holding the big, heavy melee weapons that are multi-damage. You're like, position, touch those 3 guys, and then you can fight around them. So just little things like that you think about, just kind of manipulating the fight phase to kind of help get around those things are a big deal. So custos, they don't have many models, so it's easier to kind of trap and do that if you have models. So like you're now expending 2 units to hopefully kill this unit, right? So you can't, as a Marine player, typically afford that kind of attrition for too many turns. But like doing all of it together is a kind of a dance that you have to try to work around.
Well, I mean, it's not like you have to do that every time you fight them, and there aren't that many units to fight, and it really only matters once or twice.
Yeah. Now, Trajan just can do it, so you can't get around Trajan pop and fight first if that matters. He doesn't have to be on an objective, so don't get got. Well, Thomas said you have to be on an objective. Like, well, Trajan is the exception, right?
No, you just shoot Trajan. Just shoot him. It's fine.
Just challenge him. He dies like a punk. He's so hard to kill, the guy. But yeah, he was like, okay, fine, I won't fight first. I'll just pop the Fort Feel No Pain, and then my then my guys I'll pop up to 12 attacks instead of 6 on my moment shackle instead. You're like, oh wait, that's not what I was planning at all. Like, oh, crap.
That's a lot. That's a lot to get through.
Yeah, they're neat. Like they have an advanced charge on one of the units. If they take certain relics, they can like pop once per game extra OCs. So you're like, oh, there's one blade champion's alive. You're like, I take it, and he's like, nope, I'm OC 9 or OC 6 or something. You're like, what the hell? He's out OC in my Land Raider? Like what the crap?
Yeah. It's like when you're like, how much OC you got on that point there? I might steal it from you. Like, I don't know, like 16. You're like, 4 dudes. What are you talking about?
Yeah, because when they have the OC on the guy, they have the Vexilla, the banner guy. That's usually the last guy to die in the squad. So they're battle line guys. Like you take the guard guys, so they're 2, and then the banner makes them 3. So like just a few guys can be extra OC. So it's hard to do like the typical. I'm going to take these points from you. I guess the question is the custodian player kind of playing passive, sitting back, just trying to be alive, or are they like pushing aggressively? Like I want to attack you.
I feel like time is not on their side. I feel like they have to be the aggressor.
I think that's the way to play it. I've played custodian players who just kind of sit back and they'll just like, well, I'm hard to kill. I'll just sit on primary. You can't kill me fast enough.
Yeah, Dookie.
I mean, the game's still violent enough. Like, good players are just going to like destroy
4-ups, man. 4-ups aren't going to get there eventually.
You got to think too, like if they have that few units, like what are they doing secondaries with? Like, are you dedicating those big blobs of guys that you want to be fighting to actually
the best thing you ever do
is
get a custo player like screening with like actual custodians and not the little Sisters of Silence or whatever those girls are, the prosecutors and stuff. Like if you can make them screen with those guys, like now you're winning, because if they don't want to do that at all, it's great.
Like how bad do you want those investigate signal points? You want those 2 points? It's right there. You can have it.
Yeah. Hopefully your army is just not like I give up auto secondaries. I was playing a demon list called Monster Mash, and it's like every demon, he had 4 or 5 big greater demons. It's like the bulk of his list, and it's like, well, how many do I get for each one? They're like 8 or 9 points, to bring it down and assassinate. I'm like, okay, I'll just kill all of them. I get max points. That seems easy. He's like, yeah, if you get them all. I'm like, what do you mean if? I'm like,
when I get them all?
I'll get them all.
I'm just gonna write 40 down here on my score sheet. We'll revisit that if we need to.
Turns. I'm like, I can't get 2 in a turn, right? Like that's allowed, isn't it?
at ATC, Monster Mash was a thing at ATC when I played T-Sons against it, and it was like that. It was, so why wouldn't I just do that?
No, I mean, I think in WTC it's a little harder because it's harder to move the big ones, but I think we're like looking at one of our players is looking at playing. Now, obviously, I tested against them, but with the GW style terrain, you can certainly move the monsters around, and it's a stat check army, and those guys came down at points. So I don't know, the matchups yet, like what's the best or what's the worst for those guys, but they do have they're pretty good. I mean, they're hard to kill. So
I would think that Baby Knights would have difficulty into them.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but my brain thinks that they don't really want to mess with Shalaxi and the other ones.
So Shalaxi's like 450 or something. So like,
yeah,
he doesn't have Shalaxi. He had like Keeper and the Lord Change and Kairos and Bellicor.
I mean, even just a regular Keeper of Secrets, you don't want to mess with that.
That stupid exploding 6 staff. I got shot Overwatch like so many times with that thing. Though he spent all his CP, so it mattered later. I was like, I'm dying, but I'm killing you. But it was kind of funny. I'm like, he's like, oh, I hit 4 6s on Overwatch with my 9 shots. I'm like, that's good. How many shots is that? He's like, D3 each extra. I'm like, oh my God, what? Take my 9 shots, 4 hits turn into like 12 hits or some crazy stuff. Like, this is not okay.
So if we're going to a tournament and I know I'm playing Custodes first and I've never played Custodes, give me the 5-minute. Okay, that's what you need to know. How to beat them.
Okay, so how to beat them is, if you can come in from reserves or some angles, that's very good, right? Because they can't afford to screen. They don't have a lot of screening bodies. If they take the little chumps, try to get rid of them first. They understand which ones are the wardens and which ones are the guard, because the wardens have the feel no pain once per game, the 4-up feel no pain. Then you have to look at the characters. Where's Trajan at? Inside of the characters in the guards, you can take a shield to make them 4 wounds, or they can have a spear to actually fight better. They only have 3 wounds. So I think when I played against Damien, I just assumed the guard guys all had shields, So I wasn't really paying attention. So I was just thinking in my head they all had 4 wounds, which is not the case. Only the banner guy had a 4 wounds because he wanted to fight. Because if you give him the shield with an extra wound, they have a chumpy sword, so they don't really fight good. So it's kind of like, do you want to fight or do you want to live longer? So just kind of understanding what the unit kind of composition is. And then they have a couple relics depending on how they spend to make sure you know what that is. If that guy that can do extra OC once per game, that's a bad surprise. You want to get caught out on. This guy turns on OC, so you know what that relic does. I think that's like the unrelenting. I don't know the names of them. It's like, there's another one that lets them advance and charge. Is that the Blade Guard? Well, they can. I think one guy can
Blade
give you
Champion.
The Blade Champion can give you advance and charge. That may be
That's
just a
once
relic
per game, though, right?
Yeah, I think it's the
The
relic
once per game.
And the way that relic works is interesting too. It says you could just decide to once per game advance and charge. So like he doesn't have to declare it and then roll his advance and roll crappy on his advance. He can just advance and like now I'm in a good spot. I shot you and I don't need to use it. I'm not going to charge, so he doesn't waste his relic.
Oh, that's cool.
So it's
when
pretty
do you
powerful.
declare that? Just in the charge phase, or
just when you decide you want to charge? I'm using it. So like.
Yeah, it's his base ability. You can reroll advance and charge rolls for the unit he's in. And then once a game, you can just decide to advance and charge.
Yeah, so having those Blade Champions, sometimes people run 2, sometimes they just run 1. That guy's an important guy because they're they walk slow 6 and you're like, oh, they're not that fast. And then they pop off. Maybe the relic lets you move. There's a relic that they have basically if you move within 9 inches of them, they can do a 6-inch move. So sometimes they'll pop out, be exposed, then they'll bounce behind a wall, or maybe they'll just move closer to you, because they're custos and they don't really care. Sometimes you get custo players that are just like invincible, so they just kind of stick their chin out and they don't really care. So sometimes you can bait them into doing stupid stuff. But yeah, that would be my thing, is just understanding that if you can exploit wardens by putting them in threatening positions, multiple squads, so that they pop their fort, feel no pain too soon, that's a big deal. And obviously if they pop it, unless you have nothing else better to do, don't all in to kill it and then they pop the fort, pill no pain, and then you bounce off of them. You want to make sure you kind of like, well, I'm going to shoot at this other squad, even if it's not my oath target, because I want to get more damage. And if you could chip damage and make them spend CP, they don't get to do all the things, because there is a big CP economy that they got to manage very closely. If they want to interrupt, if they want to fight first, if they want to grow guys back, all those things, -1 damage, all those things cost a lot of resources.
Is the grow back a battle tactic?
I don't know which one's a battle tactic. I couldn't tell you. But it's only once per game per squad. So even if you have a captain, I mean, you can save a little bit, but like
if I could choose, I'd rather make that one cost more. Yeah,
you usually, they don't have armor contempt, so they don't have anything like that. But they don't have they don't really they can't take the big squads like they used to, like the big brick of 10. They can't take that like now. So they don't have a captain. Damien didn't have a captain. He had Trajan. He had 2 Blade Champions, maybe.
It is not. It is an epic deed to return a guy.
Yeah, so if they have a captain, obviously, you try to look and see, but if you have a Calidus or something, they can make minus to their OC. Usually I just spend it on like a reroll. But another thing you think about is the guard guys. Their special ability is they can shoot twice, once per game. And they all have assault weapons. All the customs have assault weapons, so they can always just run up and shoot. So you're like, oh, I just advance. And then they're shooting me with some 2 damage guns. You're like, whatever, it's not that bad. Oh, shoot, they shot me. Oh, they're shooting again. Oh, that's a little bit more than I expected, their shooting is a little underrated, but like they can pop off a lot of damage. On little squad, especially Marines and stuff.
I'm hearing take out the little guys, take out their screening units, force them to spread out, understand where the characters are that you need to pay attention to, and apply force where you can, when you can, if they give you an opportunity. And when you do it, be overwhelming in your force, not ever just enough. That's overkill whatever it is you're going at and pick it apart one at a time.
You can't. Yeah, you have to. And if you can really avoid, like if you know they have fort, feel no pain, and you're like, I really got to kill it, but they're going to pop the fort, feel no pain. You got to be prepared for they might just hit all the force and you just don't kill anybody. Like that totally happens. So you just never want to put yourself in that position where you're kind of all in on that unit when they have all the power to pop.
And is it just for that phase, for that shooting fight or whatever phase that's
in? And it's once per game, right? So like if they pop it in the shooting phase, it doesn't work in the melee phase or vice versa.
So it sounds like if you could do some mortals on the charge, like Tank Shock. That'd be really good against that unit.
Well, I mean, you would say
Is
that,
Tank
but
Shop good? I don't know. Is that good?
the problem is Custodes just have a 4-up Feel No Pain natively against mortals and now the Devastating Wounds. So, like, you can't really just, like, pop off
fair.
on them.
Fair.
With mortals. I mean, you always try to do them like this. Every extra wound counts against Custodes. There's no wound that's not worth it, but you're not necessarily going to get a lot of as extra mileage out of those mortals as you used to.
All right. So this brings us, now that we've talked about Custodes, talking about testing this week. We've had our data slate come out, and we have played some games with our modified lists. And what have we learned so far? I think a lot more than we think, and then sometimes in other ways kind of underwhelming in some ways. Maybe that'll come clear. That's kind of cryptic right now. But Nick, what has changed in your lists since then?
So practicing up for ATC coming up for the 8-man tournament, I'm playing Tyranids in that. And with the point changes, Gene Stealers are actually kind of like viable again. I mean, it's what we kind of talked about before. Is like they only came down 5 points, but you're looking at going like, yeah, all right, that's a discount. I like that. So them coming down to 75 points for 5 instead of 85 points, it doesn't sound like much, but just that little bit puts them in line with like Gaunts and Hormagaunts and Gargoyles, like same kind of bracket. So picking some of them up just to kind of do some mid-table shenanigans early game, either it's just move blocking or charging chumps, killing a squad of scouts. I'm having some good luck with that. The one thing that I am kind of disappointed with is the Tyrann effects. Like, he came down a lot, but it's still not enough. Like, it's just not quite there yet. I really want to play him because I got one painted, like, all the way done. And, like, I really want to put him on the table. But the big gun being 2 shots with no rerolls is just, man.
It's just talk about disappointment on a stick right there.
Yeah.
What does he hit
So
on?
he's like 190
on,
points.
Like 2s or something natively?
He has heavy.
He's hitting on 3s heavy. So he's like, well, I hope I stood still and you let me shoot me with these 2 big guns.
Like, you look at the stat line, right? It's 18 minus 4, 2d6 damage with 2 shots a turn.
That sounds wacky races.
You look at it, you go, yeah, I could one-shot a knight. This is amazing. And then, like, you roll 2 1s to hit, and you're like, oh
maybe
no.
next turn. Maybe next turn it'll happen.
Yeah.
Don't move, knight. Oh, no.
Yeah. The next turn you get 1 hit, and all right, so I got 1 through. That's fine. We're good. Get another, like, fail to wound. You're like, okay, I'm running out of turns now. If he's going to pop off, it needs to happen quick.
And he's what, 190 now?
190.
Yeah, because even at strength 18, like, unless you're a rhino, you still need 3s to wound, right? Like,
yeah.
You're going to miss 33% of the shots.
And then everybody's got an invul these days. Or, like, 2-up saving.
Points?
Yeah. Like, you think about shooting at a Land Raider with cover and Armor of Content. It's like, all right, so you just get a 4-up.
Yeah, and if they pop the smoke and you're like, now you're hitting on 4s, you're like, oh.
yeah. God help you if there's any modifiers. Yeah, I'm hitting on 4s and I'm wounding on 3s.
And then you get a 4-up save.
On 4s. And it's like, oh, okay. And then if you do get 1 through.
You get 1 through, exactly. You're like, oh, man, 2d6. I hope I don't screw the booch on this.
Yeah, take 4 damage. Like, oh.
Yeah.
Did I mention I have a Feel No Pain too? Okay, so you take 2 damage. It's like...
Not too many Land Raiders that Feel No Pain, but yes, that's
but like shooting into like demons and stuff like that, where you're like, like custodes even,
demons,
like,
the big greater demons, like, man.
No, it's rough. I really like the model, and I really like he's almost there, but just for 190, it's just like, not yet, man.
Is there a point total, or is it a rules change that would fix him?
So he used to be -1 damage innately.
Yeah.
Changed that to once per game I can 0 out 1 damage. And it's like,
if he was -1 damage still all the time, I'd still think that might be worth it.
I would put him with the big flamer and just park him in the middle of the table 100% every time. But not quite there.
Yeah.
But that's really like the gargoyles going up a little bit. It was The neurolictors going up a little bit was like, meh, not really. I mean, you're taking them anyway, right?
Yeah,
like,
they didn't change your list. You just lost a little bit.
Yeah, like, what am I gonna do? Not take those guys? But putting the Gene Stealers in there kind of offset the cost. So I didn't. The list itself didn't change too drastically. I'm just flip flopping at this point on some of the like 200 points I got floating around that I'm trying to figure out what to do with. I don't really know exactly what the army needs. So
fair enough. Well, I've had kind of a wholesale change. My list is I got really detested at my list, and we kind of alluded to it last week, and I just got so frustrated with salamanders.
It's like back to the drawing board, baby.
Yeah, it was basically we ripped it down to the frame and said what works and what doesn't. No emotion in it. No, I'm tied to this unit because it's painted well and I like this. No, just literally.
That's a hard Band-Aid to rip off sometimes.
Dude, that's my toughest one. That's my hardest one. I got this model. It's fully painted. I love it. I love the model. And it's like, I just got to find a way to fit 80 points into this list somehow. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, you went to like straight models that you didn't even have necessarily all built and painted, right? Like some of them are still in progress. I guess that's why it's going to be a project, right?
This was straight up. Look at it from a different perspective in its entirety. Get rid of the preconceived notions of you have to take this because it's good. Well, is it? And the thing that got me thinking initially was the aggressors. I think they're a trap. I think they're a trap for Firestorm.
In Firestorm, you kind of just like, well, they got built in twin length and they just drop in. I do the mortals and you're like, they kind of punch and string 5 bolters because I get close and I jump out a land raider. You're like, it's the whole thing, right? But then you like all the things you got to put in to make that unit work. And yeah, the logistics of, okay, well, once they jump out and do their thing.
Yeah. Now what?
What then, right? Like how they move at 5, you can't advance and charge. It's not Gladius. Hope somebody's standing nearby so you can flame them. You can advance and flame, sure, but that starts to becoming a little problematic.
And it was never enough. And maybe we'll save that when we start talking about our first project, which we'll hold off on that. But Thomas, what's changing in your list?
So my list, I mean, I lost 115 points. So like, in the Marine metric, you got these like 70, 80 point blocks. You got these 120 point or 130 point blocks. It's like, well, like you can't quite take a cheap unit and make those points up. And you don't want to take 2 cheap units. And now you're losing a lot of units. So it ends up coming down to the Inceptors, kind of the obvious choice. They went up a lot. So just take some of them out. My list had 3, 3, and 6. So 3 plasma, and 6 bolters. So I dropped one of the bolter squad down to 3. So having a bolter squad with all the trimmings going full power is way different than having 3. Like who you can target, what you're attacking, what their utility is. I used to use them aggressively, not only just for shooting, but sometimes just to screen. That's a big footprint to drop within 3 inches, and just like I just screen out half the board with those guys. If you have like guys just coming in from regular reserve, you can really screw up people's reserve stuff, and they're just thinking about, well, I'm going to get shot with Inceptors. And they drop them in this weird place that you're not really caring about shooting as much as like, now you can't bring in your knights from reserve. Like this whole board edge is completely zoned out. You're like, oh, that messes everything up. Even in their backfield, right? Think about that, where you can't come in for your own backfield because these stupid Inceptors are blocking. So that has changed slightly, but like, and the damage outputs, obviously diminished a little bit. But the few test games I've had, it's still fine. The list runs really well. I mean, it's obviously, I've been playing versions or variations of it for all of 10th. So I've and before that, I was still running the Gladius, before the new book, I should say. But it's a well-tuned list. It does well. I think in most games, I have a pretty good match into almost every matchup. So I don't feel like it has any like inherent weaknesses. So it's really good setup for all comers. Even in teams, we're kind of looking at some of the alternate versions. Black Templars are typically kind of touted as the top Marine list. There's a couple different versions of it. If you want the tank heavy Iron Storm, or if you want the Gladius, or do you want straight up full Black Templars, there's lots of different kind of ideas there. But I think the Ultramarine Gladius that I'm running, I like that the best. It kind of fits my play style. It's more, I have tricks and tools for everything, and I played it a lot. That even with the hit of 115, it doesn't really seem to move the needle enough that I don't think it's still not the greatest. So my list is good. I'm looking forward to the teams. I'm looking forward to all those matchups. It's funny to kind of go through the metrics where people think that they're good into that Marine list, and I'm like, man, we do not agree. Like, I think I'm very good into you. We need to play that game and see. So there's a lot of there's a lot of joking and talking that now I have to back it up, right? Because I'm usually the one that's on the wrong side of the equation if I'm talking smack.
You're not allowed to lose to knights, no matter what.
Well, now I've like doubled down the ante of Death Guard, right? Because I'm like, I got Death Guard in my pocket. Like nobody's going to beat me with Death Guard, and everyone's like, come on, Death Guard eat Marines for breakfast. You're like, not my Marines. Sneeze.
I was out here pinning targets to his back.
Well, it's kind of twofold, right? Just like it obviously, if you lose, you're setting yourself up for a lot of potential hazing for a while, but. If you also kind of like, you put some doubt in those players' minds, and if you do take them out, you're like, man, I've set myself apart, right? Because I've got this ability to go take out these targets that they don't think you can get. So there's a little bit of pride you take into. I've solved the puzzle, so to speak, of this army or that army.
Fair enough. Yeah. So speaking of changes and all comers.
Yeah, tell us about this list, because we workshopped this a little bit. Like we kind of I think we might be on something. What about this? And what if you took one of those? And where does that leave? How many points is that? So, do you got the list? Can you pull it up?
I do. So this is the first of our projects that we're going to do here at the Meta Marine. We are going to have a recurring segment on the podcast here where we talk about this list, what we've changed, what we learned, what games we played, what went well. We may even try to record a few games with this list so that we can get some interesting interactions as they come out and make some videos on it. But the first one is going to be called the Hot Lizard Drop.
These guys always come up with some ridiculous names. And Joe, one of our other guys, he's always coming up with some names. Some of the European guys always name their lists. I'm like, what? It says Thomas and Gladius. Whatever I put in my list for the app, and they're like, no, it's freaking Hot Lizard Drop over here.
So this list started from, we were at a local tournament here, and I just kind of got frustrated because the data slate did not come out, so we were just playing to play. And I took a second heavy vehicle instead of a Land Raider, and man, was that nice. It was so nice to have a transport that was not a Land Raider in the list.
Because your original list had 2 Land Raiders?
I did. I had two Redeemers. So
you went from 1 Redeemer, and then you went to a repulsor, right? The shooty repulsor.
Yeah, I ran an Executioner. Right? And having something that could project force downrange, wow, that was nice. Wow, it was nice.
Yeah,
having something tough.
I have my Lancer in my freaking Gladius for that reason. I'm like, I just got to keep them honest. If they just rush me with the Land Raiders, I have to have a big gun to kind of put some fear in them.
The big gun was nice. It was more so the volume of fire that it had, and the fact that it was also a transport that could escort Vulcan to where he had to go.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be in Firestorm being an advance. I never could get the mileage out of those little guns because there's always these weird range bands, and it's a big tank trying to maneuver around walls. But you'd be in an advance and shoot it. It's like always.
It was very nice to be able to go. Oh, I'm going to go to this corner here, and I can see you clearly. So here, take it. That was really nice.
And that especially the Land Raider with the flamers is just like, all right, so it can move 12, and it has the 12-inch flamer. So like 24, and then you're like, yeah, but then you got to throw the advance on there, and it's like, whew, man, that opens you to shoot a lot of things on my army. I just do not want you to get into turn 1 if you go first.
And didn't you say it was starting to draw aggro, right? Like people thought they had to kill it. It's a little easier to kill the Land Raider, so they kind of now it took the heat off the Land Raider, which is kind of crazy to say. And the Land Raider kind of got to go where it wanted because everyone's freaking trying to draw down on this execution, not let it pop off.
Well, the Land Raider is this elephant in the room. I mean, everybody sees it and goes, oh, God, I got to deal with that. But if you're hiding it behind stuff and there's a repulsor executioner in my back corner because he's got infinite range, basically, drawing a beat on stuff and taking stuff out, and you're going, stop it, dang it, I have to go deal with that. So it kind of brought you out of position. So the idea of having something to draw somebody out of position was really nice. Being able to project threat where you needed it when you needed it, that's something it lacked. And I really wanted the ability to have a pinpoint of, I'm going to apply way more firepower than you think is possible or is necessary right here, right now. And the speed at which you can do that's what that army lacked. And I hated it. Like, the aggressors were the biggest problem I had with that list. You can advance and charge, so, if your flamers don't get it done, well, you're not going to get it done.
Yeah, you're just standing there.
And in Overwatch, their flamers, not amazing. Yeah, they can kill tough 4 and tough 5 models, but what the crap can't in that list? Everything in that army can kill tough 4 and tough 5 models. That's not what Marines. I need that army to do.
That's not a problem.
Yeah. I need 10 Plague Marines jump out. I need you to deal with that. And they just kind of don't. Like, they just kind of bounce.
You end up killing like the couple of chumps out of the unit, and they're like, okay, yeah, that was the expendable guys. You got them. Good job.
Or they could not be reliably, I can't rely on them to crack the Rhino open and then kill what comes out. Yeah, that's not something they can do.
Yeah. You can't be like, oh no, I everything rides on this couple wounds of flamer going through on this Rhino so that I could punch the guys inside. Otherwise, they're going to jump out next turn and just hose me down.
Yeah, it's all kinds of bad. So I started looking. We got back from the tournament. I got huffy and I said, these aggressors are just they're joining the Infernus Marines in the rank of you're just a disappointment every time I play them.
That's a hard statement. You're right up there with Infernus Marines. Like, dang it, go on the shelf. Bad model. Bad.
Well, it was like that in 9th edition for me too. I thought aggressors were a trap for salamanders there too.
Yeah.
The Vulcan. So going back to the base level in the list, things that you got to have, like they know, no joke, punch above their weight class. Vulcan, his stand makes the list hum. His ability to be a mini Norn gives you kind of a pivot point. It lets you surprise people with OC. It lets you be that.
Yeah. So explain what that means a little bit, because not everyone knows what Vulcan does.
So at the start of the game, I pick an objective on the table that's not in my deployment zone. I think it has to be in no man's land specifically. For the rest of the game, if Vulcan is within contesting range of that objective, he goes to OC 10. He also has leadership 5 up, and he has a 4+ feel no pain. That's crazy pants. Like, that's my objective. He also, in the shooting phase, can select an enemy unit within 24 invisible, and your whole army gets to reroll wound rolls with Torrent and Melta. Doesn't matter if he's battle shocked, doesn't matter if he's in combat, you're in combat. There's no aura radius to the wound reroll either.
He just sees them 24 inches or closer. Rando unit over there can get full rerolls to wound with the right weapons.
With Torrent and Melta, rerolls wound rolls.
Yep.
He's not terrible in melee. He has 6 attacks that are 6 -2/2. They hit on 2s. It's not terrible. He's got a -1 flamer that's D6 +3 hits.
That's Uriel, man. Like, that's great.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, that's like great for Marines mostly.
I mean, he's not beating up the world. He's not going to take Angron on, solo. But he's got a D6 +3 flamer that's 6 -1/1 that ignores cover. Yeah. That's not terrible. It's not terrible. He's 100 points, so you have to take him. Then there's another unit that I think is really surprising in this, and there's an upgrade in the faction that lets you flip a hit or a save to a 6 after rerolls once a turn, and it's called Forge and Battle. Put that on Apothecary Biologus. He has lethal hits. Put him in an Eradicator unit. Now you've got a unit that rerolls hit rolls, wound rolls, and damage rolls innately against monsters, vehicles, and characters.
It's not characters, though.
It's not characters, it's just monsters, vehicles?
Yeah.
Okay. That's still crazy good. I don't have to put any resources into it. They just do it.
And that's
the biggest problem, right? Like, so in Firestorm, right? Like, let's break down these Eradicators, right? Like, why is it so good? One, you can advance. So, like, if they're like not in Melta range, potentially because they move slow, you could potentially move them into range. Second, you're like, I'm strength 9, so wounding vehicles on 5s mostly, unless it's a Rhino or something. That's not super efficient, right? So, but if you're a Firestorm, like +1 strength, now you're in strength 10. Now you start thinking through all the vehicles that you're wounding on 4s with full rerolls, starts to become kind of spicy. And if you got full rerolls to hit, now you don't have to put Oath on them because they just have it innately. You add the Biologist, you're already more efficient just hitting a couple 6s on the hits. Now you're wounding a couple extra wounds, right? So like now that Eradicator unit is putting consistent wounds down range on something whenever it shoots at it. And you got the guy in there that says after you roll and fail it, you can just flip it to a 6, right? So guaranteed you can get one more lethal hit, right? You do it on the hit, like it's another auto wound right out of the gate, right? So yeah, that unit is surprising. And then even with Firestorm, you can even pop +1 to wound, right? So now you can wound that toughness 10 tank on a 3 with a Meltas. Like
you absolutely can. You absolutely can.
If you really need to get it to go, and you're like, man, that's a hard pill to swallow. When you just like take 5 or 6 Melta hits up close, you're like, ooh, this is gonna hurt.
Plus, you could pop that in Overwatch too, right? The auto 6.
So that's
the sneaky part.
part.
Yeah, that's the sneaky part, right? So
it's
since
that
it's once per
unit
turn,
is still equally deadly in Overwatch, which
no one
catches
wants to
people off guard
on a charge.
Yeah, so you typically like bring them in from reserve, right? Like you'll bring them in from reserve, pop a tank from a flank, and then like be near another tank, and you're like, I dare you to move. I will use this. You power on you too. And you're like, yeah, he's not gonna hurt me. And you're like auto 6, couple 6s, full hits, full wounds, like lethals.
and
you're gonna get 2 or 3, like right off the
I learned it from you, but I know this is not the 80s and this isn't a drug ad. I learned it from watching you, Dad.
I say that to my daughter all the time.
If you kill a transport and dudes get out, not only are they battle shocked, they cannot charge.
They cannot charge. So if you can ever kill the opponent's vehicle, especially if there's something scary inside, Dark Eldar is a great example. Or a Land Raider that wants to like move up and then the guys get out. If you can pop that vehicle, maybe it's hurt or if it's flimsy, you just kill it during their turn as they move up. Oh man, the surprise sad panda on their face when they're battle shocked, and then like they go to declare the charge, and you're like, oh wait, you cannot charge because the rules say. And man, that's a glorious thing. So
at 260 points, you get that module, and I feel like that's a no brainer, right?
Yeah. I think the versatility that Firestorm gives that unit makes it way better than pretty much any other detachment. I've toyed with monkeying around with that in a Gladius. It's just not as useful, right? Like you have all the other problems.
It's not the innately advance and shoot. It's not flip to a 6. It's not strength 10. It's it's an interesting unit. One thing I haven't had to do yet in a game, but it could, especially against something like Custodes. Vulcan could point at a unit of Custodes, and I could oath that unit. So then that unit is still getting full hit and wound rerolls against that unit.
Yeah, that's huge because Custodes also, we didn't talk about this earlier. I believe it's the Wardens. Their special ability outside the Fort Feel No Pain is -1 to wound against weapons that are tougher than them.
Yeah, if you exceed their toughness.
Yeah, so you basically be wound on 4s with a big gun or something. So getting full rerolls also is a big deal.
Like I said, I haven't had to do that yet because typically they're hunting something big, but it could in the right matchup.
Like they definitely have a profile they're looking to shoot at, but
sure.
I mean, that doesn't mean they can't just like take a small unit of guys out just without trying too hard.
I mean,
getting full rerolls
to get hit by Melta. Nobody wants that. Right.
Nobody wants that for sure. And getting full rerolls to wound and hit, like on everybody if you want. Like, oh, gross.
The old school oath, man. That was brutal back in the day.
You know how good we had
it. I knew how good you had it.
I knew you would say that.
The little like the damage rerolls that always catches people off guards, and I had to show the data card to 3 opponents when I did that ability. They're like, "Wait, stop! What are you doing?" I was like, "Hey, you can reroll hits, wounds, and damage." And they go, "I don't believe it. Let me see the card."
Oh, for Eradicators,
yeah. And it's like one of the opponents played Marines. I was like, "You played Space Marines. You know this."
I always preface that because I sometimes I expect that argument. So I'm like, all right, well, do you know how eradicators work now? They're like, usually they'll just kind of nod or not. If they don't explicitly say yes, then I'll tell them like they used to shoot twice. They don't have that anymore. They have this instead. And I explain it to them. They're like, oh, that's pretty good. I'm like, it only works against vehicles and monsters, so it's not that big a deal. And you're like, their whole army's tanks. You're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, turns out.
Not strength 9. It's not that big a deal. Like you, I think that might be a little harder to sell, but I kind of get away with it. And then like if they do something magical, then they get up that sour face at you.
Don't worry about those guys. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, might kill a rhino. Like that's all about they're good for.
So I really think they belong in that, and I think moreover a big unit is how they belong with the biologists.
Yeah.
I toyed with the idea of 2 small units and just dropping the biologists altogether.
Nah, I think the biologist sells it. It's hard, but like if you can get double mileage out of them, so like inevitably, like you don't want to just like one and done them, right? Like come in from reserve, pop a tank, and then get smoked.
Yeah,
like that one tank's not worth 260 points or whatever they are. But if you can get double mileage out of them, and they're still toughness 6 with all the wounds, it's not like that easy to kill. And the way your list is kind of set up is like it's a high pressure list. Like they're not the only one thing rolling around that's like you have to worry about.
Correct.
Right? So that's we get to the rest of it, but like that's another key component of this is like when it's go time, you bring all the hate in, and it's like
it's the hot lizard drop, not the warm lizard drop.
Lukewarm lizard.
All right, so what's next?
So company heroes with Vulcan. Being -1 to wound, giving him more OC for 95 points.
Oh my god. How much OC is that whole unit combined when he's on his cool objective?
So it's 4 guys, and they're 8, and he goes to 11. So it is 19 OC.
Take that, Big Knight.
It's a casual 19 OC.
Yeah, 5 guys just
take
jump
that
out.
Guard. Any guard they can get up to like 30 OC or something.
Yeah.
Like the OC3 if they pop the little thing. That's a surprising thing. The little Chimera drives up and unloads 10 guys, and you're like 30 OC. You're like, who? But like I guess Vulcan would be like, I just flame you. I might kill a few guardsmen, and now we're tied. You think?
Yeah. So I like that for 95 points. There are a ton of ablative wounds. They have some decent weapons, and if nothing else, you get the company champion in Vulcan. I mean, that's 11 attacks of 6 -2/2.
Yeah, the company hero squad's
he's
solid.
what 5 -2/2, but still. But he gets on 2s. It's good. It's good.
It's a solid package. Yeah, you can't just casually pick that unit up. It's annoying.
So there's
how many wounds does Vulcan have?
He has 6.
6. So I mean, you don't want him standing out there by himself anyway, because he has to be able to line of sight to whatever your super O thing.
He's 6 wounds.
No, I'm sorry. He's 5. He's 5.
Yeah, he's like a captain. He's just a regular old captain.
Yeah. So even with a 4-up feel no pain and 4-up invul, you don't want him just standing out there by himself. You need a little cushion in there.
He is still just tough 4 with a 2-up, 4-up, 4-up.
Yeah,
because I will run some dudes over there and try to punch him if I can. If he's just by himself on an objective.
Being -1 to wound, huge.
Mm-hmm.
Huge.
Yep. Company heroes, baby.
So far, I feel justified in Vulcan, the company heroes, the eradicators, the biologists.
Yep.
Okay.
Those guys have consistently done work every game I've seen.
The big change was when I noticed that Vanguard veterans with jump packs could still take hand flamers.
Yeah, because you're really kind of jump to them because you're like these these aggressors jump out and they're just slow. That wants to get out of the tank, they're moving 5, they're not really going anywhere. You're like, what am I need something that moves fast. And we're kind of playing around with the jump pack assault intercessors, right? Like we want these guys to be good, but they just aren't.
I tried out the assault intercessors. The impact mortals were whatever. It just didn't get it done for me. The Vanguard vets having 10d6 flamers that are 12-inch still and assault now. They ignore cover and they're pistol.
Ooh.
Really?
And they get assault.
Yeah, they're hand flamers, right?
I mean, it makes sense, yeah, I guess, but still.
It is that last little like, moment. But yeah, they ignore cover, their pistol, and their torrent, and their D6 12-inch. They're strength 3 base, but they go to strength 4 in this detachment. And then you put a captain with them, and now he can take a hand flamer. So now you have 11 D6 flamers, which is, I feel better than 6d6 plus 6.
Yeah, because that's what the full up aggressors would get, right?
Yeah.
It's D6 plus 1 for 6 guys.
Yeah.
Versus 11 D6.
And Vulcan can point at something, and now they're twin linked.
Yeah, so you basically, what you lost in aggressors, you're like, well, you have more shots, but you're not twin linked natively. Now you have a way to get reroll wounds, and why that's important. You got the free captain strat to give them that's 2 CP strat that says a devastating wounds, and you're like full rerolls, more shots. Like you want dev wounds, you got more shots is always better for the full rerolls to wound. It starts becoming a nice little package, and the fact that they move 12, can advance and still shoot 12, like if they're not deep striking in, which
they are,
aggressors couldn't. They can just advance, right? They can freaking just run up, advance, shoot freaking far, and that's a scary like package, right?
Yeah, and their melee is actually not terrible either. I mean, it's not you're not crowing about it. You're not 3 damage a pop,
because they got lethal weapons, right? Or lethal hits.
That's
their special thing.
The melee is what's interesting in this unit. Yeah, the flamers. I mean, no argument. Hey man, I don't know. I have these 15 mortal wounds. I want you to hold this, and then something just dies. Which is something that I always ended up averaging around 8 to 10 out of the aggressors. I feel like it's almost 50% better out of the Vanguard vets.
Yeah, I mean it's rough too. Like telling your opponent, like, so do you feel no pain? Because if not,
yeah,
get off the table.
Give me about 10 minutes. I'll be back. I'm rolling a bunch of dice over here. Never mind what happens. Just take a bunch of mortals. It's a lot of dice rolling, but
it causes an issue. I'll be honest with you. It's an interesting issue. So their melee, they have 4 attacks that are 5-1/1 that hit on 3s. The unit's default ability is they get lethal hits on the charge. So that lets them attack things that they really probably have no business attacking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can charge a Land Raider, and yeah, you may not kill it, but if it's on 3 or 4, I'd take that risk. I'd take that bet. By giving them the jump captain, which you kind of have to do, just because he's so inexpensive. He's 85 points.
Yeah, free 2 CP. Like you can't afford 2 CP to do the wound strat more than once, and then you're like, man. Especially not with Firestorm, with all the other strats that they want and can do for some janky stuff.
Yeah.
Now you can kind of like pop off, and if that unit gets to do more than one time that trick, like that's bad news bears for the opponent, right? You're never going to allow that unit to do it again.
Oh yeah, it's about doing 30 mortal wounds in 2 turns. Like, come on.
Like as soon as that thing drops, like if you don't like divert a full power to killing that, like it's going to do it again. You're like for free. You're like might be the game, right? Like you can't. So not many armies can sustain that kind of multiple times.
So the jump pack captain, when he's in the unit, he gives them +1 strength on the charge. So now they're strength 6-1/1 with 4 attacks each. So it's 40 attacks of 6-1/1 with lethal.
Lethal. That's a lot of attacks coming out of a Marine unit.
And he himself
primary focus is to shoot, right? You're like, I'm shooting you to death, and like, oh, by the way,
there's 40 attacks fighting in melee. Like, that's not nothing. It's strength 6. And you have access to +1 to wound for 1 CP in fighting or melee. So all of a sudden, strength 6 with 40 attacks, you can wound a lot of infantry on 2s, which is kind of rough.
Ooh, +1 to wound. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I always think that strat only works for combat. Or for melee.
It is shooting or fight.
Ooh. More we talk about this list, I'm like, why am I playing this? This sounds great. All right, we're not even like to the fun stuff yet. This is
the meat and potatoes of the army. This is what I started with and why I got there. The captain itself also has an upgrade. It's a 10-point upgrade. The Champion of Humanity.
I forgot he had this.
It ignores all modifiers and all dice roll modifiers.
It's got the modifier thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Do the thing. Take that, Satan. Though really only the captain has multi-damage stuff, but like...
Well, you can't slow them down. So you can't stop their charge. You can't be -2 move, advance charge. No. We're always moving 12, and we're always advancing, and we're always shooting 12.
And did they clarify that your leadership doesn't change? So even if you're battle shocked, your leadership's still 1?
OC, you mean?
OC, yeah.
Yeah, they're still OC 1.
So even if they're on a point and they're battle shocked, you're just like, no,
can't even do tyranny tricks to them and mess up.
I know, right? Like, can I battle shock them?
So that was one of the. It's a 10-point upgrade in this army. It has to be on a Tacticus model. The only units that can really be useful from it, they really only get mileage out of it, are these guys, obviously, just because of they can't be slowed down. Devastator units, so that you can have multi-meltas or las cannons that can get reduced damage. Or modifiers to hit, sorry.
Yeah, minus to hit when you're hitting on 4. Sucks.
Or hell blasters that will always be 2 damage.
Yeah, we looked at the hell blasters for a hot minute, but we discovered these guys, or you discovered these guys, and we're like, wait a minute, this is way better.
The Vanguard vets give me the ability to project force where you need it, when you need it. They're a hypermobile threat for Marines. They're not, Death or Dark Eldar mobile, but they're mobile enough. And they're cheap. It's a 300-point module. Like, that's really good. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
That's cheap, but that's definitely
that's
within
cheap
the
by
realm
Marine
of
standards.
But like a full killing unit, that's reasonable. That's in the realms of reasonable, especially for its versatility, right? Like it can do a lot of things.
I mean, you think about 600 points, you could do that twice. All of a sudden, you're dropping 30 mortal wounds a turn on somebody for 2 CP.
That just seems so crazy to like.
No, I
that
know.
is not the way my brain works.
It's
I'm just like,
pants.
this is great. Let me take 2 of them or 3 of them. Yeah.
It sounds crazy until you think about, well.
There you go. Okay, get to the rest, because you could get to that and like, maybe we put that in instead.
So I have a 6-man unit of Plasma Inceptors. I have found that the Plasma Inceptors have way more value to me than the Bolter Inceptors in this list. Having an Oath target, which is what the Inceptors are at this point, because everything else doesn't need Oath in this army. Being able to Oath something in the backfield, drop inside of 6, outside of 3, give them +1 to wound and overcharge. It doesn't matter what it is, pick it up. Short of a big knight, which even then, he's not loving life, but whatever it is.
Strength 9 plasma with +1 to wound. You're like, talk about, man, that's not okay.
And innately twin linked and Oath.
Yeah, that you can't screen out. Like, they're gonna come in, they're gonna do what they want. You can't stop it. Not realistically.
That little extra bit moving even +1 to wound, not necessarily +1 strength for most things. Like you going from hitting a vehicle on 5s, like it's not reliable to kill like a fresh vehicle sometimes. To now wounding him on 4s, like whoa. Even like big tanks like Land Raiders and stuff don't want to be taking that much plasma.
Land Raiders on 4s is no joke.
Yeah.
Nobody
wants
a lot of
hot lizards.
It's a hot lizard.
Lizard drop.
That's a hot lizard, baby. And the Bolter unit has value too, because they can also be basically anything in the game. They're going to wound on 4s.
Yeah,
short of like a Land Raider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, strength 6. The bolters, like, the 6 bolters, like, I love that unit. Making a strength 6 guy wouldn't give for that. And having a +1 in the bank, just +6 if I'm trying to wound a tank, I need 5s instead of 6s. Sometimes you're like, it's tough 10. You're like, I need a 6s to wound this tank.
But it's the -1 AP.
Why?
I just can't abide the -1 AP.
Yeah.
That's right. I could get extra AP, but like most of the time, I'm like, you drop open, you can make it where the AP matters, or you just force a ton of saves with the exploding hits. But
yeah, but if I'm dropping
in your plasma,
when I'm using this unit, I'm putting it clearly in harm's way. Clearly, I'm dropping a wedge from space, and I'm dropping an ice pick here. This needs to die. Period.
Yeah,
I'll die. You got me. But that is a problem that I have no other way to deal with, and I find that very useful. Obviously, water's wet and the sky is blue,
and that's a good thing.
So I feel like at least one big unit. I was running 2 big units, but when they went up in price, I don't know.
Yeah,
if you're gonna be burning CP on them, right? Like,
it's
you
a hard
might
sell,
as well
right?
Double down.
That's the first cut in points, right? If you're trying to be like efficient, right? You're like, well, what's the thing that went up the most? Oh, I have 2 or 3 units of those. I gotta at least drop some of them to kind of make some points back.
Yeah. And then scouts, they're just good. Yeah, I mean, you have to have some roadblocks. You have to have some guys to stand on stuff in the back. You got to have some guys to come in off reserve and just go, what do I have to do? Get behind enemy lines? Sure, I'm here. Give me 3 points, 4 points.
Yeah.
I
mean, because you can still pick them up and put them down every turn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Scouts are great.
So even for an extra 10 points extra?
Yeah,
now?
per squad.
Yeah, I mean, 65 points is still worth it just to be like, oh, I got investigate signals. Okay, cool. I got an extra 4 points because of them.
100%. What you said earlier in the discussion was that went up in points. I don't care. It's still good. Like
yeah. Still worth it.
Still taking it. Still
you
worth
didn't
it.
you didn't change the points enough to make me change their role or their position in the army to do that role.
Mm-hmm.
I just had to compensate elsewhere, and that's pretty much how I feel about scouts. I mean, 2 units feels right. 3 feels I have too many lemons and I don't know what to do with all these lemons, and 1 unit feels like not enough lemons.
Yeah, no. I think definitely 2 is a nice sweet spot for it. Unless you just like find that when we start testing this out, that like you need somebody to go do air denial or deploy teleperformers every turn, then you can just trade a unit of them every turn to do it.
Well, good news. I have something for that.
That's the best part of this list.
So, the last part before we get to the juicy part, the Redeemer. I mean, the Redeemers, if you haven't played against a Land Raider Redeemer at this point in 10th edition, you need to.
You're not playing Marines?
You're not playing against a Marine player.
It's just solid. It presents a lot of problems to a lot of armies. It's not easily dispatched. Like if the opponent has to have very specific tools to like mess with Land Raiders, or it just gets to run around doing stuff, and then and that's good. And you can use that as bait to kind of like manipulate your army or your opponent's movement if they are.
The Overwatch threat is real too. Like that's scary. When all of a sudden it's like there's a Land Raider parked in the middle of the table, and you're like, I can't get within 12 inches of that with just like picking dudes up.
Yeah, and you're like, it's freaking strength 6 because it's Firestorm. It's strength 7, so like all of a sudden that has implications into like even toughness 12 models. Yep. You're like, I wound you on 5s with these flamers. Like that's not insignificant, right? Like,
and Vulcan on my turn, it's a lethal threat to things it has no business being a lethal threat to.
Yeah, I could just get full rerolls to wound here, and that's not okay. And I could decide if I want to, like 2 CP and make it devastating wounds.
So
right?
I have done that. In a couple of
2
games,
damage devs
to do that, and I've rolled like 4 6s with the rerolls, and it's been like, hey man, here's 8 mortal wounds and take 5 saves. It's like, oh, that's bad.
Just take 12 damage real quick on Overwatch.
Yeah.
Ooh, I just did that just recently. Scarbrand.
So I think the Redeemer's a given. I think 2 is too many. 3 is outlandish, and you feel like you're the valet trying to park cars when you have not enough parking places. And 1 is probably right.
Yeah, for the points, right?
Like, yeah, I always feel like if I'm going to buy a Land Raider, it's good all in its own right, but I feel like I want to put something inside of it too, right? Like I want to use that transport, that assault ramp for something, and then like you start putting multiple Land Raiders in, you're like, I don't have points to put anybody inside of it. So you actually have, a place for Vulcan. So if he needs to run and jump out, he can either go in that or he can go in his other vehicle.
And you can do the tricks with, jumping in and out of transports. And Firestorm has a little bit of movement shenanigans in terms of, if I didn't disembark, I can re-embark at the end of the fight phase, so I can protect whoever I'd like to. My Eradicators. If they're not outflanking, they're in the Redeemer, and you shot the Redeemer. Well, I'm going to burn a CP and jump out and shoot you back, or I'm going to jump in it after I shoot. I'd come in off the outflank, shoot. I'm going to jump in the whip and protect them.
So I know they changed the embarkation in the general rule for it. Now it used to be like if you were within 3, and now it's wholly within 3. Does that affect the salamander strat?
It says unless rules specify otherwise, and the strat says you have to be wholly within 6 to embark.
Okay,
and then that might be something we could have put into what do we learn now, because that I learned because that's impactful for my Gladius, but that rule is very specifically for vehicles with bases.
That rule comes up in just a minute. That rule is there's 2 other caveats in that rule.
All right. Well, have we teased it enough at this point?
The 2 other caveats, they say, unless you are aircraft or a walker, you can you do not have to be wholly within 3 to embark if you are either embarking in a transport that is an aircraft or you are a walker.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
You're exempt from those rules if you're either one of those.
And just look at that list of vehicles right there. There's 4 juicy vehicles. One of them.
I'll say, like, let's do it.
Okay.
Pull the sheet off.
So, Storm Raven gunship. Get the red string out. Because it dang works.
Yeah, you've had a test game or two.
I've had a couple of 3. So let's talk about it. I've been dying to talk about the mail. Let's talk about the mail. Storm Raven gunship is tough to 10 with 14 wounds, I believe. 13 wounds. It doesn't matter. It's also -1 damage all the time. That's cool. It's
good.
Nice
it is an aircraft that can hover. So if you haven't played it in 10th edition, before you do anything in the declare reserves part of before each players, if you have an aircraft, you have to decide if it is an aircraft or not. So before either one of us have said, I have 5 deep strikes and 2 monkeys, you have to say if that's an aircraft or not, period, end of story. If it's an aircraft, you must be in strategic reserve. Must. Your movement is a minimum of 20. And you pivot at the end of your move like normal, like previous things, previous editions, but you don't have the -1 to hit anymore. That's not a thing. If you have that in addition, some fighters have that if they're not, there. But if you're just an aircraft, you don't have -1 to be hit anymore as a general rule. But you can only be charged or fought by things that have the fly keyword. So they can't pile into you, they can't fight you, period. So Angron can mess you up, but the 8-bound can't.
Scarbrand can't.
Scarbrand cannot. Bless his heart.
His wings don't work. Poor little fella.
I mean, you yell at Corn and he yells back. What do you want?
Hey.
But if you choose to hover, you can start on the table just like a normal dude. You lose all aircraft words. You lose all keywords and you lose all aircraft rules. So you're just a movement 20, whatever. In this case, you're a movement 20 transport who can hold 12 dudes or 12 slots worth of dudes and a dreadnought.
Oh, boy.
So then the $1 million question is, what is going inside
ipso facto,
transport?
Therefore, what? It also has a twin assault cannon that does dev wounds. It's the same cannon that's on the Redeemer, which is good. There's a twin multi-melta, which is good. And it has 2 hurricane bolters. Hurricane bolters in their truest form are kind of hard to find in the Marine Codex these days. What you remember as a hurricane bolter is kind of gone. This is an old school hurricane bolter. 6 shots, rapid 6, 24 inches, twin linked, 401. So both of them are within 12. In my case, strength 5, 0-1, 24 shots. Twin link.
Strength 5. Hurricane's going to strength 5. Like, that opens up a little bit more power on those stupid things.
It's enough. Like, that's enough horsepower to go, oh, that's kind of raunchy. That's kind of rough. So in and of itself, it's okay. For 240 points, it's okay.
Yeah, it's a Land Raider, right?
It's a 20-inch move Land Raider with fly. That can advance and shoot.
But -1 damage, yeah. So, yeah, and it can advance, right? So, yeah, absolutely.
Now.
It can advance, yep.
The interesting part is how it interacts with dreadnoughts. So because it can carry a dreadnought, when you disembark a base that is bigger than 3 inches, so this thing that is embarked cannot fit wholly within 3 inches of a transport. When you disembark, you place it in, the way it's phrased in the rule book, says an inch away from the hull or the base. So I'm an inch away from it. Well, he has a 4-inch big base. I have 5 inches of additional movement on that dreadnought when he disembarks, just from getting out. A 15-inch move on a Brutalis is kind of crazy pants. Now add in that he could advance and shoot. I mean, a 21-inch move. What? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, his guns are all twin linked. They get an extra plus strength because stupid reasons. And then he's like this giant 2-up save dreadnought that just like is jammed down your face, even on turn 1, right? Like,
Yeah,
imagine
because he has Meltas too. Because
He's
a good salamander. He's a good hot
twin
lizard.
linked. He's a good hot lizard, baby.
Now, that's a single that's 2 shots twin linked, right?
It is 2 shots twin linked.
Solid.
Now, what's interesting is if you shoot at the Storm Raven, I can do the same strat to dump out a dreadnought. He can either dump out somewhere in the next turn, he's going to move and charge you when you don't expect it, or he's just going to get out and shoot you, or I'm just going to dump him on an objective because he's OC3, I think, or OC4.
Yeah, because the airplane's OC0. So if you're like, I flew this plane near the objective, that can't score it, but if you happen to shoot at that plane,
he's OC4.
Like, oops,
he's OC4.
Jumping out, got the point, right? So shenanigans, right?
And
like,
then there's a tough 10 model with a 2-up save with 12 wounds somewhere who's OC4. It's kind of rough when you don't plan for that.
You don't really want to go get in a fight with. Not idly.
So
talk about brutalis, like dangerous combat wise. Like, what's
you
so
read
good
his
about
stats and you're
brutalis?
like, I took the guns because you take the guns in Firestorm. It's more shots at strength 5. It's 5 minus 1/1. 4 of them are twin linked. You take it. That's what you do. Both the Talons and the Fists have 6 attacks. They're going to be strength 12 minus 2, and I think 4 damage. 3 damage.
And they're
twin damage. 3 damage. And they're twin linked.
3 damage.
3 damage. Twin
dreadnought.
linked.
That's all twin linked. Every other dreadnought's jealous.
Yes. His thing though is he does impact mortals innately on the charge. So on a 2 to 3, you're doing D3 mortals when he finishes the charge. On a 4 to 5, you're doing 3 mortals flat, and then on a 6, you're doing D3 plus 3 mortals. In addition, you can tank shock at strength 12.
So now you're dropping, 12 to 14 more dice, looking for up to 6 mortals. You're doing, a couple mortals on the charge, and then you got all these 3 damage attacks. Like,
call it between 8 and 10 mortals, realistically. Realistically,
it starts to becoming like, yeah, my 6 attacks, and maybe I get 5-man Marine squad. Maybe I miss a few hits and I don't. But then you're saying, well, I do all these mortals now. Like, he becomes like a little package all to himself that can like really mess up something.
I mean, considering that's like no resources into him, that's just him. I mean, I guess a CP for tank shock, right? But like, okay, 1 CP to do 8 to 10 mortal wounds before you swing.
So you can get +1 to hit if you get out of a transport in this detachment and cause battle shocks. So now he's shooting on 2s. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's extra rules.
How does he cause battle shock?
That's just a strat. It's just a strat. So he has to kill a model in a unit, and if he does, you take a battle shock.
Ooh.
He gets +1 to hit. If he gets out of a transport, he gets +1 to hit, and if he kills a model in that unit, you take a battle shock. Which
that's really good when you talk about dropping him on an objective, especially when that's 25 inches away.
Yeah.
So basically anywhere on the table.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Like it's you're taking a gamble in some cases with that strat and the uses cases of that. But if your back's against the wall, your back's against the wall.
I mean, no one's going to see that coming, really. Like, even if you know it, right? You're like, okay, yeah, I can kind of prep for it a little bit, but like, the number of guns.
The worst case scenario is you're like, I got a few guns left, or I got this tank, I need to chip some damage off of that freaking Storm Raven. You're like, oh man, I can't afford to shoot at it because he might pop out and, get the point or shoot at me with this dreadnought. And like that's not okay, right? Like now you're like, I'm not shooting at the thing that I want to shoot at because he might get me. Like, oh man.
Is it 1 CP to get out and shoot at the thing?
It is.
And it's 1 CP to cause battle shocks?
It is.
So max burning 2 CP?
It is.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, you know, 2 CP again. And like Firestorm is always like struggling with the CP count, right? So like you're like the opportunities to like really pop that all the time is low, right? Especially if I do mortals, I want to jump back in the transport that costs CP.
So you cannot
the opportunities there
with the dreadnoughts. You can't do the re-embark strat with the dreadnought because it has to be infantry to re-embark.
Yeah,
you can disembark, and you can get out they get out and shoot you. And you can do the plus to hit and all that jazz. But having 2 dreadnoughts, and then so when you re-embark in a transport like that with a walker, you just have to get within 3, and then you jump in. So the idea is you're always leapfrogging to get the extra movement. You always have one in, and you always have one on the table.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it makes shooting at your giant floating Land Raider like super sketchy because dude might hop out with some melta guns and just blast you.
So, all things being equal, the universe makes sense. You put Vulcan and the company heroes in the Storm Raven. You fly him to his cool guy objective. You dump out the Brutalis that started embarked. He has a 15-inch move. That's beyond midfield. If he advances, and let's just say you get a 6 to advance, heaven forbid. Inshallah, all of a sudden, I've got a 21-inch move. I'm 3 inches away from your deployment zone with a Brutalis turn 1 before you've had a chance to go.
Ooh, well, let me break your brain a little bit. On one of the missions, we measured I think it's Crucible. I think the deployment. It's like the long triangle.
Yeah.
It's like 2 parallel triangle. Like you just look at it and you're like, 24 inches, right?
No,
like Dawn of War.
not.
No, it's only 20 inches.
Yeah, I'm an inch in your deployment zone.
Yeah, like that 20 inches, like they're coming in hot. Like you're deep in their zone already. You deploy on the line. You go first. Dreadnought jumps out 15.
Moreover, heaven forbid,
walks up there.
I just fly the stupid Storm Raven 20 inches and then dump him out.
Drop the guy
4 or 5 inches deep in your deployment zone.
Now, it doesn't have assault ramps, right? You can't charge after.
You cannot.
So you're like, at least you don't have to freaking worry about that, boy.
But,
Yeah, because you just run the next one either before it gets out or after it gets out, run up next to the Storm Raven, and it just jumps back in. So ready to do it again next turn.
You position it so that the next turn, the Storm Raven can fly close to where the Inceptors are going to come down, and you can protect the Inceptors with it. And then you have Inceptors inside, and you go ahead, shoot it. You better kill it, because I'm going to get out and overcharge.
Yeah, nothing worse than Inceptors dropping down and shooting is letting them jump into the freaking airplane that now you can't shoot at. It risks them shooting you again.
To get more activations.
That's gross.
Yeah, that gets you more activations with Inceptors, which is, as I understand it, pretty good.
Yeah, and then with the plane in hover mode, right? It's just a transport, right? So it gets to be obscured. Yep. It gets to hide behind terrain. Obviously, it gets lots of guns, so it moves fast, 20 inches. If you can just go over terrain, depends on if there's walls in the way, because you would have to fly up and over those. But it potentially can just drive close to things that you don't want to.
Oh, is that a loan up?
Guns.
Yeah.
How about 24 Hurricane Bolters at strength 5? Those are bad, right? So it's aggressive.
How many activations is this army?
Between 10 and 11, depending.
It's not terrible for a Marine list.
It's however, all 10 or 11 are hitters.
Yeah. There's no
it's doing work.
You get the scouts, obviously, but they're not they still do work. So you got all these guys doing work, a lot of killing. I guess you don't call it the hot loader drop for nothing, right?
Turn 2,
when it's go time. Turn 2, you can unleash all of these things.
Turn 1 is just kind of oh wow, there's a dreadnought right there, and maybe he charged something that was forward deployed, or he's just beyond midfield behind a wall. I got to deal with that. And then turn 2, it's the jump off, and just everything dies. That's what it does. And then we'll worry about secondaries on turn 3. All right.
We'll get to that part when you're dead.
If you've got the secondary points that I could take from you by killing, we'll just do that, and we're good.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, you got a couple scouts. They got nothing else to do.
They have rocket launchers to shoot. Okay, they need to participate.
I mean, speaking of secondaries, do you feel like you want to do tactical most of the time with this?
Hard to say.
I think if they have a kill one, right? If they give you the kill one, you just take the kill one.
If it's an obvious, if it's demons that are monsters and characters, like
you're like big monster demons, perfect.
Or if it's you have 6 or 7 characters, and I'm like, you don't know what's about to happen to you, or you've got 4 or 5 transports, and it's Tau, and it's all right. I'll take that. I'll take that gamble.
Yeah, you're like behind me lines, right? You can't screen all this out because it's just coming in hot, right? Like you can get behind me lines like it's going out of style.
We will be playing on your half of the table, I assure you.
Yeah.
I mean, just passive ones too. Engage on all fronts is nice because like you got the scouts that can just do it every turn. You can replace them as they die. Then the jets just floating around, being like, "Where I gotta be over there." That
so you you lose the aircraft keyword and all rules associated with it if you hover. So you can do that with the Storm Raven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because aircraft can't get engaged, right?
Yeah,
like
or behind enemy lines. But if you hover,
there's another one too.
I'm not an aircraft in any way, shape, or form. I'm just a big flying land raider.
Dude, I like it, man. I like it. I don't know how I'd play against it. I have to see how much I can manipulate that. But
the weird
it makes me want to try it myself.
It's having played it now. It's you just pull your pants up and run. It's just aggression. That's all it is. There's no like, there's a couple of sneaky little tricks you do here and there, but by and large, I mean, I'm just throwing dice at your face
and rolling them as many times as I need.
Yeah. It's aggressive without aggressors.
So, I got a question. With the plane as it is, it's on that big flight stand,
Correct.
right? It's like that tall. When you're going over a wall, do you measure from the base or from the model?
From the base.
For the height.
The base, yeah.
The base? Okay.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I think in the GW terrain, right? Like you have those little low walls, you have the crates on our setups with the NTL stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, that's perfectly set up for an airplane.
I gotta go up and in. I don't care.
Yeah.
Or
it's not effectively changing you much.
It has enough movement to. What I need to move 4 inches beyond that? Okay, sure. Here's 4 inches this way, 5 inches that way, and then 15 that way, and then I'll advance D6 if I need to. It's it's an interesting list.
Scary.
It's an interesting list, and always having the Brutalis having a 15-inch move on the turn they jump out. All of a sudden it's wait a minute, you need a 4-inch charge. That's bad. So, this is what I have.
Well, I guess the next step is let's put it on the table, 10 times. See what you do.
It needs to go against the gamut.
Yeah.
It needs to go against show me something that's more aggressive. Show me World Eaters. Show me Death Guard with carnivores. Show me other marine lists.
You get a charge off on a carnivore, you destroy it, right?
Oh yeah, pick them up. They don't have an invuln in melee, so you just being twin link.
They can't take mortals either. You don't want to take mortals. You can't risk taking a couple melt hits just from shooting. They might just die from that, right? So.
Oh, I mean the baby knight list. Yeah. I mean the eradicators can take out 2 a turn, 2 a battle round, I should say.
I just want to. You and I both have these lists that just always auto nuke knights. Mine's much more like I have to play the game to kill knights. It's not like my list inherently is just so killy on knights, but your lists are just knights anywhere. Get a sniff of these guys. Everyone's tooled up to just break them, which warms my heart. I just have this disdain for knights so much. I don't know why, but I'm I want to hear some knight stories. So it's perfect timing, right? Because we have 8 TC right around the corner. We got lists due, in a week or so. We're probably going to do some last minute testing and tweaking, obviously before lists are due, and then leading up to the event. And then we're going to have 5 full games of teams where we're going to get some interesting pairings. This list is very if you're not understanding what it does, even though we spent an hour talking about it, it's not really apparent until you play it a couple of times what it can do to you. And it only takes getting got once before he drops the hot lizard on you. You're like, this is hot. This is so hot. Oh wait, now there's flamer guys. I forgot about those guys. Oh, I'm getting mortal wounded. Oh, where's the dreadnought? Where's the dreadnought? You're like, flames are coming from the back.
I can just imagine the turn that it pops off when someone's doing the math. I took 50 mortal wounds this turn. What the? What?
That's crazy, dude. Because you the Brutalis, these guys don't do enough damage for 175 points. You're like, like I'm constantly like trying to like make him work because I want to use those dreadnoughts, and I'm like, I just don't make it work. He's like, hey, I got this idea. What about these dreadnoughts? And I think I even said, can you put a Brutalis in there because I want those to be good. You start messing around with it. He's like, how about two? Like, what's happening here? What has happened? Where are the aggressors? All gone.
Yeah, I don't think they have a place. I'll be honest with you. They're not fast enough. They don't do enough damage, and they're not reliable enough on their mortal wound damage. Which sounds dumb, but and they're not survivable enough. They're just not.
Yeah, I think with the Vanguard vets, that package is just some more nice. Just having that versatility, like I can now move fast, so you don't have to like. You could put them kind of off in a little corner. Maybe they're like picking out a flank, and now they have enough mobility to like jump and still be active the next turn. Like if you drop aggressors in the flank, they may never get back in the game, right? Like they have to spend their turn maybe jumping in a ride, and then another turn jumping out. You're like, they'll never get to do their thing again. Heaven forbid you want to shoot and flame. Like get out of here. That'll never happen. Your opponent's got to like gift wrap that for you to pull that off, right? So
I would love to find space instead of 2 scouts to have 2 infiltrators. Love it.
Well, man, greedy town Tina over here. Well, you drop the second Brutalis. That's the only way you pull that off, I think.
Yeah, or the Inceptors.
You just go for the
like
you want.
You drop the Inceptors.
I mean,
and you drop.
You're taking out some death. You taking out that Inceptor death.
I'm gonna say that hurts my heart.
That's a good profile though. 3 damage. Like Marines don't have 3 damage. Like sometimes that's the perfect damage, and you have like the bonus that makes Inceptors better. All the things that Inceptors want, you give them extra strength.
This army is spoiled for choice for damage. Anything in the Marine Codex is killier in this list. Doesn't matter what it is. It's better. I mean, it just is. I mean, don't get me wrong.
I mean, you definitely have to be careful on the turn that you go in with all of your. You have like 10 scalpels, and as long as you take out the right target, like entire priority is going to be huge because, like, yeah, one of these things goes down or 2 of these things go down, and all of a sudden you're going, I've got 2 dreadnoughts that have to stand on objectives now to give me primary. It's not just like a straightforward like, oh yeah, I walk forward and I shoot everybody with meltas. No big deal. It's definitely like you need to know what you're doing with it and like where to put things and what time to put them there kind of deal.
I think this list also struggle right with if they have a lot of MSU because you have a lot of splits. Obviously, flames can kind of you can kind of try to spread it around. But like if they drop in from reserve or deep strike behind you, if you full pressure forward and you've taken their home base, but now they come in from the back and now they're like, oh, my scouts are back here by themselves. Like, who's protecting or turning back around to come get them, right? Like, you have some good movement, but like that's the trick with this is
I feel like
just wholesale swap sides?
The Storm Raven and the Vanguard vets really give me way more mobility than I ever had.
Yeah,
previously.
Totally agree.
Mm-hmm. They give me the ability to turn around and say, oh, it's turn 3 and you put 400 points in my deployment zone. Well, that's got to go.
Yeah, I mean, you have the rapid reaction, right? Like, if you pop off turn 2 and you don't need all of the things, you can, these guys are still in reserve, deep strike, or maybe I'm mid board where my dreadnought jumped out and he's moved up into your deployment zone, but now my plane can just back up and go the other way, and now I'm back in my home base again. So
this is where I'm at, for better, for worse.
I like it.
I like it too. I think it seems like it's well thought out. You got a lot of like tech choices to cover different angles, and it's just like you said, as a Marine player, I'm like freaking just like salivating over all the damage that you have built into this. Like every freaking unit, just like, I don't want that to get near me. I don't want that one either. I'm like, oh gosh, these guys move faster than me, and I'm like, oh, man.
And that's my hope is that something in this catches you off guard. It catches you out of position, and it's a hammer, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's going to put the hammer on whatever it wants to.
Yeah.
And that thing is gone. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, what am I going to do now? Because that Satan died and that was the way I was going to get those points or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we now got to put some games in it. You've played a few games. So, okay. So we know we want to play some more games. We'll probably try to capture some of that footage where we report back. We got the tournament coming up. So over the next couple of episodes, you'll have a lot more data to provide. But you said you played a couple games already. So how did those games go? Who'd you play against?
The first game I played against Nick, and that was Well,
So Nick got to experience it firsthand, eh?
Hey, Tyranids don't really like things
I
that are
didn't know
faster
too
than
much
them.
about this game. I don't. Yeah, I wonder why.
Yeah, no, it was over pretty quick, honestly. The Brutalis coming in with the Storm Raven. I think you were only playing with one Brutalis in that list, but
yeah.
him dropping in, and I just did not have enough to deal with him in time, and he kind of just stood there for a second, and I was like, he dropped in, and I threw some guys to kind of move block him, and he's like, "Cool, well they're dead now. Do you have anything else?" And it's like, no, because everything else died too. The Flamers, the Flamers killed something. They did like
They
15
killed
mortal
a
wounds
Maliceptor.
to. Yeah, just
Oh,
15 mortal wounds to a Maliceptor. For a fresh Maliceptor. He was loving life. He was happy. Those guys are just like, okay, so
leather drop.
pick him up. How many? I do 15 mortal wounds. I'm like, well, I have 14 wounds, so you got me. Yeah, and then just like Eradicators pick up my big monsters that are the Exocrines and stuff like that can deal with the vehicles. Deal with the vehicles. It's Tyranids, so we don't deal with much. But yeah, it's just, man, it's rough. It's just one thing after the other too, because it was the Vanguard vets jumped in like midfield and flamed the Maliceptor. Then the Eradicators jumped out of the Storm Raven. The Storm Raven went back for them, picked them up, came in, kind of the middle trap around my deployment zone, and then the Inceptors dropped in and killed like 2 Exocrines. It's like, just pick them up.
Yeah, I deployed.
And at that point, I'm like, I've got one Neurolictor standing over here. He's like, oh, you do? Cool. Storm Raven moves and advances and is like, hey man, how about some Hurricane Bolters? I was like, I don't like that. So, it was like, I think we got to turn 3 and I was pretty much tabled.
That was
at that
the
point.
surprising part was the Storm Raven being able to just bully things off of objectives. I mean, by turn 2, he's in your backfield, just picking stuff up that you really don't want him to mess with, and you got to put some horsepower into a Storm Raven to get rid of it. I mean, an Exocrine shooting at it is not a threat.
Nah, it ain't enough.
And with armor contempt,
and the Hurricane Bolters are like a perfect profile to just like, oh, I've got 10 guard send over on this objective just to hold the point, or I've got 5 Space Marines send over, hold the point, and you're just like, okay, here's a bucket of dice.
hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s.
It gives you that, yeah, it gives you that like anti-horde or the chaff just guns, because everything else has like super awesome guns that you want to be shooting at big targets and like scary stuff, but you still need something to be like, oh yeah, there's a Biovore over there, shoot the Biovore, or there's like a Ripper base or a Nurgling over here in this corner who's just standing over there doing deploy teleport homers every turn. You can be like, stop it, I don't like it.
So the one question I have is the captain with the jump pack. Do you want a Relic Blade or do you want a Thunder or a Power Fist?
Relic Blade strength 6 with 1 extra attack, so you go from 4 attacks to 5 attacks?
Or on the charge, it'd be strength 7.
He's a captain, though. He should have 5 base attacks, right?
So
I think he's 5 base with the fist and 6 with the relic.
The fist is 5 attacks that are strength 8, which would go to 9. And the relic weapon is 6 attacks at strength 5, which would go to 6 on the charge. Strength 9 on the charge, that's all of a sudden a rhino is on 4s. 3s with +1 to wound.
Yeah. I feel like, lethal hits maybe makes the case for 6s, fair. 1 extra attack. But if you're oathing, you're like strength 6, strength 9. If you need +1 to wound, you're pretty much in the same boat against the tough 10 targets, big things. I'd almost go for the sword. I think it looks cooler anyways, but
it does. I can't argue with you. I can't argue with you. The relic weapon looks cooler. All right, so we will give that a good go. See how it does. I think it's going to be Operation Hot Lizard Drop is going to be a success. How much of a success, we'll have to see. We'll play some games. I'm going to take it to ATC. Hopefully, it looks like so much jank when we're doing pairings that, yet again, I get thrown into stuff that gets caught off guard and my games are over in 45 minutes.
Get that good long lunch break.
That is the recurring theme in every ATC that I go to.
He's always done so early. I envy him. I'm always. I love playing my games. I'm always joking around with my opponents as much as I can. So like I use up all the time, whether it's in the game or I'm just chatting. But it is nice to be like kicking back in, like they're like over there having a drink and eating some food. I'm like, I'm all stressed trying to get my game done in time and turn in the scores and whatnot. And they're like, well, how long you been done? This game's over here.
I mean,
like, what?
To be fair, I know the list, but if I didn't know that list, if I saw it, I would think, well, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing, so I don't give a crap. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, this is just a bunch of random
it's so
stuff
off
you
the
had.
wall, right? Like I think Storm Ravens, we're starting to see a couple lists pop up that have Storm Ravens. So like they're not the first time that people are like saying, hey, there's something here, but typical Marine list, this is I haven't seen a lot that puts this on the radar. So like if you just look at it and you don't know who Mac is and you're just like rando guy. If I ran this, I'm well known enough that someone might take notice, right? Like, what is Thomas up to something? There might be more here, but like Mac, nobody knows Mac, right? Except us. So
there's some people that know Mac. They're the guys who are like, who knows what? Wait, can I see your rules? Wait, what?
I agree. I look at this list. I'm like, this doesn't look like I've helped them make some parts of it, or we've thought through some of it, so I kind of know. But I'm like, I'm afraid to see what Mac does with it because he's always coming up with crazy stuff. So I'm excited for him. I'm like, if it wasn't green guys, if I could somehow fit Calgar in there, but like you need to, it has to be salamanders. Like it really has to be.
If you're not going to play salamanders,
you could drop the Vanguard vets, right? You lose the Vanguard vets.
The Vanguard vets don't work that if it's not salamander.
Yeah, and then that's a big part of the list. It's part of the strats that you can use. You want to use the full power strats, so like you could just fish for sixes, and you're like, I do my 6 mortal wounds. You're like, I guess that's not 15, but 6 is okay. You're like, I guess, but why at that point? Like,
still can't.
So you said you played a couple games,
you
right?
Still
like
can't Overwatch with them in combat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's pistols, right? So,
but that may be a couple people, maybe listeners haven't figured that out. That like the big guns never tire, and the pistols rule that lets you shoot in combat only work in your shooting phase specifically. They do not work in the opponent's whatever phase that you're using that in.
Which is what you're using Overwatch for. So yeah, you can't. If you want to stop a big tank from overwatching you, just be in combat with it. You're like it messes everything up, right?
Yeah. I played against a rando Chaos Space Marine player who is a friend of a friend from another group, and
is this full power Chaos Space Marines or after Data Slate Chaos?
It's after Data Slate Chaos Space Marines. It didn't work out for him. He had 2 Forge Fiends. It was a bad list. Like. Nothing got to shoot at anything before the hammer dropped. It didn't work out.
Yeah, the Alpha Strike on your list is so hard, right? Like the guys move so fast. You're coming from Deep Strike with the guys. If you just really want to flame something, and there's no stopping it unless you just like straight up, screen it with bodies.
If you have 2 units of infiltrators, it changes my list. But then I just run Brutalis into infiltrators.
Yeah, it doesn't change it. Like you just don't come in on turn 2, right? You're like, fine, that's just going to get you next turn. I hope you like screen good because these Brutalis are going to get you otherwise. This airplane's going to fly over there. And even if the airplane dies, like it's not like that huge of a loss in your list, right? Like damage wise, you're like, whatever.
He does blow up D6.
Gotcha.
The ultimate last hot lizard. The ultimate.
The name is so apropos. You just came up with that on the fly right before we started this, right? The hot lizard.
Yeah, it's Operation Hot Lizard Drop.
So apropos, it fits very well. So yeah, we're gonna do some more games. Obviously, we're gonna do some testing. We'll report back, and then ATC right around.
So we'll have
a lot of data.
We'll have one more podcast before ATC happens, and then I think we're going to try to record one together at ATC because we're all staying in the same place. So
that's right. That's right.
Maybe we'll record the first. We'll do a 2-parter, and we'll record after the first day, and then maybe we'll do a short one after the second day. And we'll see how everybody's feeling.
You're going to see us all haggard and battle worn.
It's only 2 days, 2 games a day, right? It's going to be awesome. We're going to have 4-hour rounds. We'll have plenty of lounging around time. I think it'll be super sweet. It's going to be a nice, relaxed format with the team stuff. We'll have lots of time to hang out with the buddies and strategize in between rounds or even doing their team, the pairing process. So I owe, from an NTL standpoint, the National Tabletop League, I owe a bunch of videos for doing the pairing. It's just how it works and watching us go through it. I've kind of teased and said I would do that for a while, and we just circumstance have slowed me down. But we should be getting some of those videos out here soon too. So if you're interested in that, leading up to ATC, definitely tune into some of our other content. That'll be great. So we've been having, I'm never the guy that cares about pairing. I just don't care, right? Like, just give me some knights to play. I want to beat them. That's all I'm really looking for in the teams. And now all of a sudden I'm like, I'm invested in the team process. Like, who's going to match up against this? How do we play against that? How many points are you going to get? I'm like all interested in, like, if I say I'm going to get this range of points, how confident am I in that? We just did some mock pairings, or, against a couple other local teams. And it's interesting. You're like, okay, let's go through the pairing process. Before we say anything else, what do you think your scores are going to be? And what do we think our scores are going to be? Right. And then it's comical, like, when one team is like very confident that they got the best end of the matches, and then you're also very confident. So you're like, one of us is not right here. Like,
I'm 15-8. Well, I'm going to 20-0 you. Like, wait a minute.
The conversation of unless you like straight up play the game, like, obviously we don't always have time to do that, but like, you just like, well, you said you're going to get 20-0. I'd say I'm going to get a 15-5. Like, somehow, how are you doing? Talk through the match. And sometimes people are just full of hot air, and you're like, that's not how that's going to go. And sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't realize you can do that. And then that's we would have lost this whole round because of this one mistaken pairing. So it's kind of good to go through that exercise. So hopefully we can kind of capture some of that stuff. I don't feel like we're trying to keep anything secret. We're like full disclosure on our list and how it all works. So that's fun. Some people like to kind of save the secrets for the team event so that they don't spill it. Whatever. Like, you want to beat me straight up, like, bring me some knights. Let's go.
I mean, it's a hot lizard, baby. I'm going towards your deployment zone.
Ooh.
Maximum speed.
So Mac's on a different team than than me. So then hopefully we get paired up, and then it's going to be Marine on Marine action, and I'm going to have to deal with the hot lizard because I don't think anyone else wants.
And then we'll end up with a 10-10, and we'll call it a day.
You'll be done with 2 hours left.
We'll take the full 4 hours of stupid stuff happening because we're gonna like deal with it. Like, oh, if I do this, he'll do 20 things. Okay, if I do that, he'll do 19 things. Oh, like,
you're going on a clock, buddy. I'll be honest with you. It's a 2 hour
4
clock.
hours. Yeah. I got the whole time. I got plenty of time.
You'll use it, I have no doubt. But you're going on a clock
for sure. Oh, awesome. I'm excited, man. It's always exciting when you have a new list and you're kind of like, you just like, you come up with something, unique, and then it has some legs. You think it has some legs, and you're like, I want to put that thing on the table, put it through its paces. And I'm like, I'm looking at this list. I'm kind of jealous. I'm like, look, this is exciting. I want to like put the full power on this thing and start doing all the tweaks and see if I can't get it to go.
I think it's one of those lists it's, and my other lists were like that too. It's, you got to have miles with it, and if you have the miles with it, though, it could be rough. But
yeah, if you get the reps down and you get kind of like, I'm just like, this is how I do it, and I can do this. Yeah.
But to Nick's point, I think it is going to be target priority is going to be knowing when is the go turn and what has to die, because you have.
Yeah.
I can turn anything to 11. Which one do I turn to 11 and when?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, we appreciate you listening. We'll be back with another episode. Maybe we'll play some more games. We'll have a better idea. We'll update Operation Hot Lizard Drop again with another episode of it. And if anything else interesting happens in 40K, we will, of course, cover it with a Marine slant. And we'll let you know. So, guys, thanks again. My name is Max Style. This is Nick Fuller. That's Thomas Bird. So,
all right.
We appreciate it, guys.
Enjoyed
Thanks
it.
for listening.
We'll see you next time. Thanks.